Thanks indeed for joining us at this hour. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim and welcome to the second edition of the campaign edition of Choice 2017, because it's here that we're going to track politicians wherever they are as far as their campaign is concerned. And speaking about campaigns, today President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected, actually he is in Kiambu. Our very own reporter Rita Tilina is going to join us shortly and tell us more on what the president is going to say there. And in Homa Bay, the NASA, some of the NASA leaders are there addressing the people, and they're going to have another press briefing today. That is the top NASA guns today in Nairobi. We still don't know the content of that press briefing, but we are going to definitely bring it to you live, because we suspect that they're going to talk about their manifestos. Just the day before, the NASA outfit is going to launch their manifesto ahead of the general elections. We're also getting reports that the Jubilee coalition might also do the same and launch their own manifesto on Wednesday next week. If you're just joining us, this is the campaign edition of Choice 2017, and the program begins right now. So let me just introduce my guests here in studio. It's a full house today. We expect Professor Macharia Munene to join us any minute from now. But let me just start from my right, and we have Hassan Kochore, who is a man from Oxford and is also currently writing something about Nairobi politics. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And on his left is Jarim Omogi, who is a candidate for the Ugenya parliamentary seat through the Ford Kenya party. And far left, I'm not saying your political stand, but just the direction, there is Kavins Owonde, who is a political analyst. As I've already mentioned, it's a season of politics and many promises. So let's just take a look at some of the promises both NASA and Jubilee have made in the year 2013. By then, of course, NASA used to go by the name of CORD under the leadership of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. So we're going to get those details shortly on our screens as far as the Jubilee manifesto is concerned. Maybe that's taking a bit long. And the Jubilee have made several promises in the year 2013. And they were campaigning on several key pillars. Actually, let me just start with the CORD manifesto in the year 2013. And they had about 10 key pillars. They started with jobs, food security, national security, poverty and cost of living was something else that they had in their manifesto. And they were also propagating for a people-led government. Those are some of the key pillars of the CORD coalition then. They went ahead, they had social equality, infrastructure and land. That is something that they were keen on. They talk about the quality education. They had also focused on the healthcare, and they were aimed at building a one indivisible nation. Those are some of the key pillars of the CORD coalition then, that is in the year 2013. And on the Jubilee side, they also had a number of promises that they had made, including honest and transparent government. They had also promised to have, a commitment to ending corruption. Have they fulfilled that promise? That is something that we're going to discuss shortly with our guests here. And they talked about the full implementation of the Constitution, as well as, devolution and the protection of citizens. Those are some of the promises that the Jubilee coalition had promised then. They went ahead, they were talking about rights and freedoms, job creation. Actually, they promised to create 1 million jobs every year. Have they fulfilled that? That is something that we're going to discuss shortly as well, and extending basic services such as water and electricity for Kenyans. Those are just some of the promises that the Jubilee coalition had made in the year 2013. They also promised several issues in regards to security. They talked about, equipping and modernizing the security forces, the shake-up of the National Intelligence Service, and enhance and invest in specialist anti-terrorism unit. They also talked about improving police pay and conditions of service. Have they fulfilled that? That is something that we're going to put on our radar as well. they went ahead and, promised strengthening the new independent police complaints authority. They talked about incorporating CCTV technologies in the fight against crime, also create a new border security force. Those are just some of the promises by the Jubilee Alliance then. In the year 2013, they also promised to recruiting extra 15,000 police officers per annum. Well, we're going to, of course, that manifesto in the year 2013 is going to form the basis of our discussion this afternoon. And I have already mentioned about creating 1 million new jobs, and they also promised that they're going to create a reliable energy infrastructure, as well as establishing a vibrant national irrigation scheme. It's something I'm sure most people from the NASA outfit are going to disagree with because of the current food crisis that we are witnessing in the country. Let me just recap what I had said earlier. The president is currently in Kiambu, where he's trying to, solidify his support base in the larger Kiambu County, a county that has close to 1 million, actually more than 1 million voters. It's only second to Nairobi County. So a lot is at stake there. So let me just start our discussion right here. So let me just start with you, Hassan. You've seen the manifesto there. You've seen what, Jubilee has promised in the year 2013. How will you rate them?
On what scale? 0 to 10? I would say 4, if I was generous enough.
Oh my, that's not being generous.
I mean, also it depends on the context. If you evaluate Jubilee government now, if you did that maybe 4 or 5 months ago, would have been a different story. But because of the context in which we are, when we are talking about high cost of living, the infrastructure has been launched, yes, but there's been a lot of questions surrounding the cost and the feasibility of some of these projects that had been put on the table. So yeah, if we are talking about now, I think Jubilee doesn't fare very well, especially also given its own missteps in the last few weeks.
Thank you, Hassan, for that. Hassan has rated Jubilee to have performed dismally according to his ratings. What do you have to say? How will you rate them?
Thank you for having me in the show. First of all, it's not Ford Kenya, but Ford.
Ford.
Yes. I would give them 3.5.
3.5.
3.5.
You've gone lower than Hassan.
Lower than
this
that.
This is interesting.
Given the fact that, look at the manifesto, number 1, in terms of governance and transparency. That is totally out. Look at the issue of security that they talk about. Look at the infrastructure. Yet it is there, but as Hassan is saying, there are a lot of questions that need to be asked in terms of that. Look at the food security, where someone has to wake up as early as 7 to be in the supermarket at least to line up for food, for unga for that matter. So given all these, I think Jubilee government have done dismally, to say the least.
Let me hear from Kavis now.
Yusufu, I
hope you have a different result.
Let's see what it is.
Let's wait for it.
I think it is not worth it talking about manifestos anymore.
Yeah.
If you look at the way Jubilee has performed, it is clear they had no intention from day one of executing that manifesto they gave Kenyans. It was purely for campaign purposes. Once the campaign was over and they were in office, they did not do their first key manifesto agenda, that was laptop to primary schools. In fact, if it were not the noise that the public made, they would have put it under the rugs and forgotten about it altogether. So I think this manifesto issue, even trying to give people marks 3, 4 is a waste of time. It doesn't work.
Hassan, I'm keen on listening to your view on this. NASA is going to launch the manifesto tomorrow, and perhaps Jubilee are going to follow suit and launch theirs on Wednesday. But there are people who are saying, basically these two main protagonists, that is NASA, initially they were known as CORD, and Jubilee, are like just copy-pasting, each other's manifesto. How different are they?
I mean, I agree with Elvis. I mean, manifestos, just things that people put out there because they're formalities, they're what parties, in other places need to do. But it doesn't mean much. Look at the timing of the launching of these two manifestos right now. I mean, the people have already, the number of undecided voters is minimal. And I don't think any of those people will be influenced by the manifesto to vote in any way. So when you already have a country that has decided, is deeply divided, polarized along ethnic lines, and there are a lot of other issues at stake, I think manifestos are more or less, useless things. And I'm not particularly excited to read any of these things. As you said, there are bullet points that are copied and pasted here and there, and they don't mean much. And
Jarim, do you agree with that? And perhaps let me just give you an example. There's the issues to do with the free secondary education. NASA has come forward saying that Jubilee has copied it from their manifesto, and Jubilee is saying that that is their brainchild. So do you agree with Hassan that manifestos will not play a critical role on August 8th?
One, I don't agree with Hassan that manifestos are useless. That I don't agree with. It is important to put in context that the manifestos, both between NASA and the Jubilee, are basically following the blueprints as far as, for example, the Vision 2030 is concerned. Yeah. So you don't expect both NASA and Jubilee not to talk about free primary or free secondary education, because these things are in our blueprint on Vision 2030. These issues are there. Two, it is not true that at this time there are people that have made an already choice that who they're going to elect. That is not true. Actually, what we are talking about here now is that most Kenyans we are trying to come up with an issue-based politics. But I agree with him that the country is divided between NASA and Jubilee, and I would say it that the country is divided into two. You are either that or that, which should not be the case. Actually, as we speak, we've got about 65 political parties that need to be respected and also be embraced. But when we talk of two political parties or two coalitions, then we miss the point. What we need to know is that manifestos are in line with the Vision 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, and other blueprints that Kenya are signatories to. And it is important that these things are brought out in manifestos so that those Kenyans that want to make an informed and evidence-based choice on who they are going to elect can really understand them.
Kavis, of course, tomorrow we expect a very colorful ceremony from NASA when they're going to launch their manifesto, and as already indicated, Jubilee are also going to follow suit on Wednesday. So is it going to change voters' perception towards these political parties in any way, perhaps?
Manifestos are just used to defend yourself against the fire from the other side. However, for me, the biggest manifesto I would have expected from any of these protagonists is actually goodwill. Say we are going to govern Kenya with goodwill. No corruption, no theft of public resources, no tribal goodwill. Like somewhere in the Bible, Jesus said the biggest law is love. That is it. So when the love is there, you do everything correctly. Love wananchi. Provide them with what the law requires you to give them. Because leaders can always circumvent any law. They can always circumvent any manifesto. They can always wait. Like now, Jubilee is going to be here for only the next 5 years. If they were to be elected and they have such a colorful manifesto, what are you going to do if they don't actually live by their manifesto? These are just things to get votes. At the end of it all, it's just worth a piece of paper. Exactly. It's just worth a piece of paper. That is a comment from Canvas. Hassan, I understand, of course, you're well versed with politics, maybe in the United Kingdom. We've just seen another election in the UK between the Conservative and the Labour. But there, when they launch the manifestos, you'll see a clear-cut kind of difference between the two political parties. Will you think that maybe in Kenya it's the same case?
No, far from it. I mean, the reason I said manifestos here are useless, I mean, they try, obviously, to link to these other blueprints and all that. But, I mean, this is a country where when we have a referendum, for example, on a pertinent issue like, the Constitution, how many people read the Constitution, for example, how many people read the Constitution in 2005 and voted yes or no based on the contents of that particular Constitution? People had already started saying yes and no, even before the Electoral Commission had, formulated the question.
Because
and that is what I mean when people have already made a choice. I mean, you don't have even a question, but people are already saying we are saying yes and no to this, based on the fact that their ethnic kingpins have already taken position on these things, and they've already started campaigning to convince people that this is not good, or it's essentially bad for you. So you're dealing with a population that basically is being hardened into a particular, to make decisions, along ethnic lines, rather than, as my friend here says, issue-based politics.
Exactly.
I mean, we can go on and on about how our politics is not issue-based and how it's ethnic and all that.
Of course, one final thing about the manifesto, because this show is about, the campaign trail. We're going to talk about, where these leaders are going to address their respective supporters. But one final question, perhaps, and I'd like to hear views from all of you. Jubilee has been a bit, let me just say, they've been a bit clear on the number of jobs that they're going to offer Kenyans in the 2013, before the 2013 general elections. They had indicated that they're going to offer about 1 million jobs every year. Have they delivered? And if not, on the other hand, the NASA outfit, by then it was called, they were not even brave enough to give out an exact number, an exact figure.
Let me say this, that yes, in 2013 they said 1 million per year. But from where I sit, I understand that there are a number of NGOs that are closing, the number of companies that have closed. I won't want to mention any. That tells you that a number of jobs are being lost as we speak. Two, I think, again, the numbers were basically to cheat Kenya so that they could vote for the then government, that is the current government, that is Jubilee. But looking at that, and the most affected people are the youths as we speak. And if you go, like a candidate like myself, if I go down to Kenya, you would feel the desperation, you would feel the anger as far as jobs are concerned. On coming on to NASA, first of all, they have not come up with, yes, they have not come up with the numbers. And what I would love to hear from the two and others, let's not only think about NASA and Jubilee, there are others too, on how are you going to create these jobs? Are you coming up with, the factories that were closed? Are you going to revive the current factories that are not doing so well? That is how you create the jobs, not just by numbers, not looking at the numbers. Look at the sports, where are the sports here? Look at, we are supposed even to host one of the best, the Chan. And what are we hearing at this time? The issues. And that's where the youth can get the jobs. But if we are getting some of these issues that are coming out, they will tell us that at this time we are going to create more, yet you've been in power and you've not created, but you've lost, then we are missing out. It's a very important information. I think the numbers, we need to be told how. What are the facts that are going to be revived and all that?
Kavis, before the 2013, once again, Jubilee were bold enough to give the figure about 1 million jobs every year. CORD did not by then. And how will you rate Jubilee from that promise that they made? Have they
First of all, it is very important to understand that Jubilee was just bold enough to lie without blinking an eyelid, because they knew it is not possible from nowhere to think of even 1 million jobs. You realize that to create jobs, you must put favorable conditions for investors, because it is investors who create the jobs. Jobs are not manufactured at the EPZ or wherever factory, then you distribute them to people. We must understand that in the near past, we have had so many organizations close. And you notice from the time Jubilee came into power, there has been a constriction in movement of money. It is the speed of money that creates jobs. But Jubilee goes even to an extent of limiting the amounts you have to withdraw without declaring to 1 million when people buy TVs for 1 million in supermarkets. So that is restricting the movement of money. They are making Kenyans keep money under their pillows, and that is not good for economy that creates jobs.
We're just about 50 days shy away from the general elections, and already we are seeing smear campaigns already starting. Jubilee has already launched a complaint with the NCIC saying that the NASA leader is inciting people, and they're accusing him of incitement. And let's just listen into what the Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Kaiseri had to say about that.
How do you refuse our in-laws to come and see and live with us? Mind you, the principle of willing seller, willing buyer is there. And any Kenyan, all Kenyans are free to live anywhere in the country. You can live anywhere you want, so long as you have the capacity to buy the property and the seller is willing to sell and the legal process is followed. There is nobody ever who will come and grab your land. And so I think Kaparo has got a duty to Kenyans to ensure that, because that amounted to incitement, that amounted to hate speech, and I personally, we just wait for Kaparo. If Kaparo give us instruction, of course the DCI is there, and I'm sure he must have been preparing to investigate. The DPP will be there to prosecute. And I think nobody is above the law.
That is Major General Nkaiseri, clearly indicating that no one is above the law. Of course, he was speaking in regards to some comments that were made by NASA leader Raila Odinga in Kajiado. Jubilee have gone ahead and launched a complaint to the NCIC to that effect. Kavis, I saw you shaking your head. Were you disagreeing with him?
You know, every time you hear Nkaiseri talk, it is an echo of what Jubilee is saying or thinking. If Nkaiseri was the first to talk about this thing, I would have given him a little more respect. To wait until politicians talk about it, then you echo it, that is missing the point. You also realize that it is not the work of the cabinet secretary in charge of security, nor the president, nor whoever, to tell us what is hate speech and what it is not. The courts can tell us. At worst, we would have let CIC, the Kaparo team, to tell us that this looks like it is hate speech. But when I listened to what the CORD leader said, the NASA leader said, I do not see anything. Even in my own village, I always advise them, do not just sell land to people from outside, because in the future, your children will want to know where their land went, and they would not even be privy to those agreements. They will demand it, and this is what brings tribal clashes again and again. Those people who are being killed in Eldoret in 2007, they are people who bought those lands genuinely. But to avoid something like that, you reduce the level of bringing in new people into a region. And in any case, when they talk, they didn't specify that this tribe should not buy land here. They just say, don't sell your land to outsiders.
Before I get your comment on that, Hassan, let me just get it from a real-life politician here. Do you think there is need for politicians to, be a bit, careful when it comes to political rallies?
It is sad. We would love to, we the politicians, to be a bit careful.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that is the message that the people need to hear down there. And I've heard Nkaiseri talking of saying that he's waiting for instruction from Ole Kaparo to, when was this? That he has to wait for instruction? If indeed he is the head of the police and he's the cabinet secretary for interior, why can't he go on? Yeah, and it is sad that they're talking of, the NASA presidential candidate talking of this. But it is true that land is a big issue in this country. Land has led to a lot of killing in this country. And the problem is we fear saying the truth. And whenever we say the truth, we are told that you are inciting. It is important that you advise your people, don't sell your land. It is not wrong to say that. What is wrong if you say that? Then someone say that that's hate speech. Don't we know that because of the selling of the land that we had a lot of killings in other places? That is a fact.
So you're saying people basically should not do business. Anyway, Hassan, let me just get your comment on this. You've already indicated that this is a very highly polarized country, and there's some kind of danger when it comes to any other election. So let me just get this from you. Do you think politicians need to watch their tongue, perhaps, when they're on these campaign trails?
I mean, that cannot be emphasized anymore. I mean, but before we get to that, I would like to point out one thing in Kaiseri's press, whatever. He did say that it's a willing buyer, willing seller, and you have to underline that because, I mean, this is the same language that has been used. For example, if you remember in the presidential debate in 2013, when the issue of land, especially in the coastal region, was brought up, President Uhuru Kenyatta said that, it was a willing buyer, willing seller agreement. And that is problematic at so many levels because you have influential people in the government who actually allocate themselves land but all claim to have, bought it from people who are willing to sell to them. So this is a narrative, willing buyer, willing seller, has been a narrative that has been used to justify disenfranchisement, inequality, where people who have, less power cannot defend their property, then you use, the legal means or, the language to say that, okay, actually these people basically displaced themselves. But you can be generous enough and try to, resettle some of the same people whose land you've actually taken. So the willing buyer, willing seller is basically something that has been used by the powerful. As particularly, we know the issue of land redistribution in Kenya in the post-colonial period has been highly politicized, and I mean, it's common knowledge who got the land, who are the sort of the black sort of colonialists.
I think those are very important points, and we do hope that the land issues will feature prominently in the respective manifestos from both sides, that is NASA and Jubilee. And of course, this show is about the campaign trail, and as we're speaking right now, our senior political reporter Rita Tinina is going to join us shortly, all the way from Kiambu, where we believe President Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, he has toured several areas there, but he's going to have a major rally in Thika town, and it's something that, you know, political pundits here are saying that, you know, it's a move aimed at solidifying his base. And we did see him tour Kakamega yesterday, you know, on a charm offensive. Anyway, let's go straight to Kiambu. That is Thika town. We still don't have pictures. Anyway, Rita is going to join us shortly, but for now, let's just take a short break, but we'll be right back with more. This is the campaign edition, an extension of Choice 2017. Don't go too far.